You can't outsleep or out vacation a lack of meaning. Burnout isn't about the hours, it's about emptiness. Good day to you all, and welcome to Bad Day Excellence, the podcast where we turn tough days into opportunities for growth. I'm Brian Walsh, an optimist with over a decade of experience in marketing, leadership, and personal transformation. In that time, I have shed more than 100 pounds, run a marathon, and written a book. I've also worked with some of the most inspiring people that I've ever met. And today, here are two of them, Amanda and Nicole.
I'm Amanda. I own Operation Phoenix, which is a agency that is helping to work with leaders to make turnover predictable and preventable so they can create teams that stay to scale their business.
Hi, I'm Nicole. I'm an organizational psychologist. I own a very small boutique firm called Truer Words, and we work with mission and vision driven organizations to help them make their processes match the words on the wall.
And I'm Brian Walsh, and I subscribe to all their channels because I found them was TikTok, which is a really interesting area because that's where a lot of the people that we're not necessarily catering to some of our services, but we're trying to cascade into impacting the lives of the individuals that we interact with on TikTok. So today we're going to talk about burnout, and what we're seeing today is a multi-generational burnout. You got boomers, millennials, Gen Z. They're all exhausted, but for different reasons. Nicole, can you, you did a disrotation on burnout. Define it for us and, give us the deets. What is that information that really solidifies that, yeah, this is an epidemic?
So we're going to have an ironic moment here. I majored in literally everything that wasn't math. So if you had asked my teenage self if I would sit on a podcast and talk about math, she would have laughed at you. But that's what I'm going to do. So burnout is math. If you have more demands than you have resources over time, then you get burnout. And those demands can be physical demands. It could be physical labor, but more often they are emotional demands. And you mentioned earlier where we're seeing this lack of purpose, this lack of meaning. And that is a huge demand that we don't talk enough about.
That's awesome. Yeah. Amanda, what are your thoughts around burnout itself? Like, have you experienced it or, you've worked with several teams?
Yeah.
What are you seeing when it comes to burnout?
Yes. So I've definitely experienced it. And I have realized I normally experience it with the lack of connection. And I've noticed that a lot, especially in Gen Z. There's no connection. Like because they're not told, they don't understand how their jobs contribute to the business as a whole and why it's important because leadership is no longer taking the time to explain that to anybody. So I've always been somebody who has managed up and spoken out. So I've always made sure I understood that. But even I have gotten to points in employment where it's just nothing I do is making a difference. And I think that's a big piece of burnout that's not looked at enough, like Nicole started to allude to there.
Yeah. And I mean, I found myself during COVID, which is crazy. I was crying in a closet. I was operating at 125% productivity, but I didn't have the outlet or the connection that was either in the office, the office water cooler, or even just have an outlet outside of work in order to make those connections.
Right.
And I mean, it was a really low for me because I'm very much so a very social animal when it comes to how I approach things. And that was just one of the many ways that I've seen most of my teams. I asked a question, hey, poof, I'm a genie. If you could change anything about the company or our process or projects, 33% of them had answers related to connection.
Hmm.
And we're all remote workers. So it's really, really interesting that, in this post-COVID landscape, we're finding that it's still there. And, some will say, oh, well, I have to go into work and do this, these are first world problems that you're remote, but it doesn't matter where you are.
Mhm.
If, like Nicole had referenced, if your resources are low and the demand and the work just is so insurmountable to climb, then it's a recipe for disaster.
And connection is a resource, right? So connection can help you meet the demands of your workplace. And I think the other thing that we don't talk about, particularly with remote, is that it's entirely possible to have a remote team who are extremely connected to each other. I've worked in that environment. Some of my best friends I've never actually met in real life. And yet that doesn't happen in some cases. And I think this puts an extra burden on leadership that they're not used to. They are used to, Amanda, when you talk about leaders bringing people along and how their work matters, they're used to that being really a communications function. Like, oh, I'm just going to pass down the message that I'm being told to say. And about 90% of the time, that's not the full truth, if it's any part of the truth, right? And so the way you learned that, the way you built that meaning traditionally in office environment was that you met the people who your work impacted. And now if you don't have a deliberate way to meet those people and your leader isn't taking on that role of saying, oh, hey, this is where your work went and this is how it impacted these people, then you're not getting that anymore.
So one of the things that I've been jumping on is I've always loved multi-generational understanding. I love how the brain works and how your upbringing actually cascades into your work ethic, your work environment, how you approach change, everything. In fact, most of our development happens when we're younger. The psychiatrists are always asking, what happened in your childhood? That's because you built and solidified a lot of these behaviors back then. Whether it's, oh, I wasn't held a lot, so now I seek a lot of validation.
Mm-hmm.
And in our world of I want to go, I want to succeed as quickly as possible because we're in this world of distraction, which didn't happen before. I'm finding that when I talk to Gen Zers, there's this disillusioned purpose, right? I want to live the American dream and own a house and doing all this stuff. And they're like, because that's what I was told to do.
Mm-hmm.
And then, you've got the millennials who are just overloaded.
Mm-hmm.
And I definitely, I'm an older millennial and I'm stuck in the messy middle. And I shouldn't even say stuck. I'm in the messy middle and working my way up and down and sideways in order to navigate this chaos that is an ever changing workspace and political environment and everything. And how do I foster a wonderful environment where all the individuals that are multiple generations can thrive? The work's always going to be there.
Mm-hmm.
But you want them to feel proud in what they do and feel fulfilled so that they can clock out and do what they love. I mean, that's really the purpose is what do they love to do? How do we empower them to do that?
Right.
And then obviously, you've got the Gen Xers, which are like sandwich stress, right? Like, it's like, they're like, hey, I was offered all these things. I was a latchkey kid, so I need to be relying on myself. It's me, and like I deserve all these things. And they're now like, they're either in total leadership or they're like asking all boomers, like, give me the control. You said we could have this, but these dang boomers won't let go. And for them, I talk with boomers all the time. They have this identity loss because they're like, we were the best. And now they're like, but now what do we do? Because they're transitioning into
We were
retirement.
the best, but we
Yes.
broke everything. And now
Yes.
everyone's blaming us for everything.
Yes, but it's the avocado toast that's ruining everything. It's not
Well,
what we
yeah.
did. Yes.
Yeah, no, it's avocado toast. It's not the crushing weight of $300,000 worth of student loan debt.
Right.
with
Yeah,
compound
exactly.
interest.
Mind you, I also was raised by my grandparents. So like I have these 50s morals of like grit, but also suffer in silence. And it's been really interesting to navigate.
So you're like
all
a
this.
true Xennial because you've got
my-
enough of that Gen X. Like,
Oh my God. I mean, the age old thing, like we didn't have seatbelts. It was my mom's arm. No, I didn't even have that. They put me in a tire in the beer van and I would move around in the back.
we sat in
drove.
we sat in the back of the truck and just got
Yeah.
flung around
Exactly.
down a
All-
dirt
all good
road. You
things.
couldn't even breathe. I mean, it was an asthma attack waiting to happen.
Yes.
Of my childhood, I look back on it, I'm like, wow, it's a miracle CPS didn't show up at the doorstep. Did
Yeah.
CPS exist when I was a kid? I don't know.
Who knows? But what I want to do is I want to ask Nicole, bring in some of your studies. Like what are like some of the job demands, resources, models, emotional contagion? Like what are some things that we can bring to illuminate this burnout that isn't just one generation?
So one of the things that I've noticed is you talk about burnout with a boomer and you get an immediate pushback. Like they're just living in denial. Like they're burning out and they're incapable of even acknowledging that they're burning out. So they're just showing up at work like a little extra grumpy and a little extra mean. And if you think about it from a cognitive perspective, there's this concept of cognitive dissonance, right? Like we protect ourselves, we protect our own vision of our own identity. And so if you have spent your whole life in corporate America and you have given your life, you've sacrificed time with your children, you've sacrificed time with your friends, and this is what you have done. Your identity is I am, vice president of whatever. That's who I am, which is very typical of that boomer generation, even some of the older Gen X. And then someone comes along and says, hey, by the way, you're destroying our entire country and we're all dying under the weight of it. And, whatever. They're not going to look at themselves in the mirror and say, yeah, maybe some of these things weren't a good idea. They're going to double down and they're going to say, not only were these things a good idea and I still believe in them, but you're the problem. And how dare you? You just aren't working hard enough. And that's exactly what we're seeing play out in the news. I mean, we're seeing it like not just at work, but across all of these things. And these young whippersnappers is not a new trope, right? But the vitriol, the level of divide between the generations is a little bit new. And I think that's my attribution for it is that corporate stopped pretending to be our kind overlord and they're just going like full on evil villain now. And like they're just like entering their little villain era. And that's fine for them. Like, great, I'm glad they're telling the truth. And those of us who are like, yo, I didn't sign up for this nonsense. Are you crazy? And so, millennials who are drowning are pushing back. And Gen Z is looking at this going, are you kidding? I watched my cousin go through that crap. I'm not doing that. And so I think, and also millennials, younger millennials, and the Gen Z are benefiting from the fact that the Xennial and Gen X parents looked at their own childhood and said, yeah, suck it up and deal is not an adequate parenting method, and I'm not going to do that to my children. And so they have been raised to be self-advocates. And so this is the first generation of people coming into the workforce who even have the language to advocate for themselves. I mean, like, I don't think I knew the word self-advocate until I was like 30.
That is such a good point.
Yeah, Amanda, like with some of the insights that you have around organizational structures and communication, a lot of your content speaks to the individuals and how they can look for some of these communications from top down. From an organizational perspective, right, which seems like it's built for the industrial era.
Mhm.
But now we're transitioning no longer from like manufacturing items, but it's like intellectual. And so they're draining our brains,
Mhm.
right? And they're picking and prodding from different areas. Like, how are you seeing that impacting the workers of today?
Okay, that's a great question. So when they're doing the leaders that are doing that, which they are very much doing that, they're like, it's almost like they're seeking approval. Like they're trying to make it sound like they're asking for the team's feedback, but then like they do nothing with the majority of the feedback. They maybe do one tiny little change. Like it's so crazy.
Or they punish them.
Every single time they do that, people become more and more disengaged because they're more and more like, what is the point of even talking? Like, you're not actually listening to me. You're looking for me to confirm whatever it is that you want to do anyway. Or they don't tell them anything at all, which is worse. Actually, it really depends on the situation. It's just because we're dealing with boomer and Gen X leadership and their personality types, like Nicole is just talking, like we've been talking about. When I think about boomer leaders, the things that come to mind are the need for control and the complete lack of accountability. Like nothing is their fault. Nothing is their fault. There's always somebody else to point the finger at. And that's just another way to disengage people. They're not creating teams, which is something I talk a lot about. Like they are very much stuck in the mindset like I'm the boss, I'm in charge, you do what I say, and you don't say anything back. And that's just to Nicole's point because Gen Z specifically has been raised to not do that. It's become so much friction leadership to junior because they're so different. Like boomers and Gen X were very much raised in a respect your elders world. And now we're in a place where we can listen to younger people. I personally think they have a lot more to say about how the business should operate because they're the ones doing the work, which is something I talk a lot about too. And this really comes down to leaders and bosses, no matter what generation they're in, truly listening to the people that they're leading. And we can apply this to all aspects of our life right now, but I'll end
Well,
there.
it's this moment where leadership is no longer granted, it has to be earned.
Yes.
And people who came up in generations where you just were anointed with your little leadership crown and you were a leader and it didn't matter how good you were at it, how bad you were at it, like you were a leader. And so now you have to be given respect. And like we're past that. We're like, nah, you don't just get to like tell me things because someone gave you a crown.
Amanda, I want to go back just to something that kind of sparked with what you were saying. With a lot of your content and what you were talking about, like it's that people first development.
Hmm.
Yeah. But how do you, in a world where compliance
Hmm.
seems to be still there from up on high, how do you operationalize the care of your team from a leader? Like, let's say messy middle or even higher up, but not in control. What message would you tell them, or how would you tell them to approach really taking care of their people?
Yeah, I mean, it comes down to very intentional conversations and very intentional team building. Hate using that word because I found out the internet hates that word, but that is what it is. This is why there's so much talk about like one-on-ones with managers and direct reports. It's not a status update. It's not to be like, okay, I'm working on X, Y, and Z. Here's the updates. That should be part of it. But the bigger part is really like, how are you? How are you doing? What can I help you with? Like, just having those intentional conversations can create a much healthier workplace. And that's just one thing. If you add skip level meetings, which is when a manager talks to, well, like a manager's boss would talk to the direct report of that manager. So you skip the manager in the middle. So there's more connection between the top and the bottom. Full team brainstorms is something I like to throw out there a lot because a brainstorm should be a low pressure situation where people can like throw out ideas. And then, like little team building is such a broad term. I've learned that people take it in all different directions, but they can be something as simple as like having everybody write a thank you note to somebody else on the team. Like, it doesn't always have to be like a huge, big event. It's just intentionally learning about or showing appreciation to people you work with. So anything that does that is going to build a healthier team environment and create more communication between top and bottom, which just makes a much more streamlined work environment.
Yeah. Nicole, like with jumping off of that, like what does a healthy "Are you okay" look like across these generations?
I mean, it has to be believable, right? If you are a general jerk to me all day, every day, but in our one-on-one every other Wednesday, you start with, "Are you okay?" I'm not gonna answer you. I'm just gonna say, "Yeah, I'm fine." Right? I mean, it's a relationship. And I think that's something that came to mind while Amanda was talking was there's this whole big push. Somebody was bragging about how one-on-ones are going to be replaced by your AI avatar, your AI digital twin. And I was like, you've got to be kidding me. Like,
It's on them.
like, are you like, okay, now what you have told me with this piece of information is that you have no idea what a one-on-one is for.
Mhm.
Cool.
Yes.
Great. Glad to know that we're still training people how to do that. I think this is one of those things that I keep coming back to over and over and over again. If I have to tell you the ROI on being a decent human being, you've already lost the plot.
That is a
Like,
good line.
You ain't lying.
That is a great line.
Yeah. Yeah.
seriously, like the number of times that I have sat with leaders and in my head, all I could think to myself was, oh my God, can I send you back to kindergarten? Like,
Yeah.
learn how to be a decent person.
Yeah. When managing up, I will try to sit in their shoes before I talk with them. Because
Yeah.
what I've noticed is as I get higher and higher and communicate higher and higher, they're seeing numbers. And then I try to think from their perspective and like re-engineer, like, what are their external pressures? Why are they only focused on these things? And Nicole, like you recommended to me, go read Infinite Game. And I'm noticing more and more these people, these players that are leading these companies are playing that finite mindset game where they're just focused on
Next
just
quarter.
this quarter or even just this month. I just led a 5-day leadership clarity challenge for a sales leader. Now, he is a director, so he has regional sales leaders and then the sales individuals. He was a high performer as a sales member. And therefore, because he was really high performer with sales, with that, like, all right, this month I'm going to do this, I'm going to do this. And he just kept going, going, going. But did he have the acumen to lead? No, because it didn't matter because his numbers were up. So we figured, let's promote him. And, because then, his knowledge or his pressure will teach others. No, he's not.
Nope.
He's not geared with the leadership tools. And so, like, that's where we're finding ourselves being promoted just because they're good at their job. And I feel like that's a huge lack in this space to build the connection. I think there's a gap there.
Well, and I
Absolutely.
think there's also the entire system is set up to keep that gap there, right? Like it's a systems problem. We aren't. So you said something at the very beginning of what you said. You said, I'm managing up. And that's fine. People need to be able to do that. And also, don't you think it's a little bit backwards that we make frontline employees who are theoretically our least experienced, our least educated, our least savvy, translate upwards to the people who should be the most educated, the most savvy, the most experienced? Shouldn't translating be their job? Like, why does a frontline person have to figure out how to say, well, we're going to leverage synergies and work in cross-functional things to reduce silo? Forget that. That's no one actually knows what the heck that means. Like even ChatGPT can't freaking translate it. And also, no, make the person who's paid more be the translator. Just sit and think about that for a second. And
Yeah.
yet, but you have all these boomers and Gen X who are in charge and they're like, well, I had to translate up for my person and I had to manage up. So everyone else has to manage up to me now.
Yeah.
Emotional
Yeah.
intelligence, dude. You're supposed to be the leader.
Yeah. It contributes to the disconnect between the bottom and the top because a lot of people at the bottom do not know how to do that. And because they haven't been trained to, it's just like people like us who can't sit by and watch something be broken and be like, no, you have to fix it.
Yeah. I think, Ryan, you talked about ADHD and I'm going to like derail you here,
No,
but maybe we're
I
going
was
to transition.
just about to go into that. Yeah,
But that's
absolutely.
it. Like, great. We can't not see the patterns. And, the justice motivation, it's like, oh my gosh, I can't shut up about this. But also, like, why do I have to tell you? Like, look with your human eyes. These things don't make sense. They don't match.
Yeah, and the evolution of our species, which is why I love actually having ADHD because, back in the hunter-gatherer, we were the tops, right? We were the ones that would go out, we get stuff, not die, come back, take care of everyone.
I love not dying.
Yeah. And then all of a sudden somebody was like, look, I put a seed in the ground and I grew this. You don't have to go out and not die. Right. Like, I was like, okay, great. But us today, we've evolved into this space where you're told to sit there and follow these instructions and don't ask questions. And Nicole, you are totally right. I tried 5 times to get a leadership job at my last job. And before I had tried 5 times, what's so funny is the CIO, the director, and the manager that were above me, they were grooming me for a lot of these leadership roles because they recognize the EQ, the understanding how things work. It's not just getting the work done, but like the people. And then all of a sudden the CIO left, the director left. And then I was like, all right, well, it's time for, people start moving up. And I was like, okay, so let me go for that leadership role because it's not like I wanted to, like I didn't want to become more successful just to become more successful. No, I wanted to create the environment where everyone felt trust. They were doing meaningful work. We keep playing this infinite game, if I can reference it again, and just like enjoy it. And all of a sudden the atmosphere changed and it became, well, I need to take control of this from top down. And I wrote one of those job descriptions for myself. Like the director said, write your job description, and I lost that job. And the feedback that I got was, you weren't authentic enough. And I was like, first of all, what is that to begin with? And did you ask anyone on the team? And so like they wanted a yes man. And what's really interesting is, all three of us were pattern identifiers. We don't like the status quo because we need that motion in order to not feel successful, but be invested. And if we don't have the why and we don't have, the connections that we need, how can we thrive in an environment like that? So how does an ADHD hyper focus individual avoid burnout and also create the innovation in an environment like this? Nicole, what are your thoughts? Yeah.
So one of the things that I talk about a lot when I talk about burnout and how to avoid it and how to set up your environment in a way that prevents it. You have all these microsystems, and I delegate as many. If you hate it, automate it, right? Like that's my motto in life. But also paying attention. It sounds ridiculous, right? Because attention is that thing that we have such a deficit of, supposedly. But actually noticing the things that recharge you, that restore you, because there is a difference between rest and restoration. If you were sawing at a rope and the rope was fraying, if you stopped sawing, that's rest. But that rope doesn't get any better. As soon as you pick up that saw again, the rope is just as bad off as it was before. That's why you can't vacation your way out of burnout, as you said earlier. But if you restore, if you fix, if you rebraid the rope, right, then the rope is in better shape. And so when you start sawing again, the saw has to work harder. So pay attention to what actually makes you feel restored. Is it time with your family? Is it time skiing on the slopes? I live in Denver, so skiing is a big part of my life, and I'm really looking forward to winter. But, how do you restore yourself? Is it a quick 5 minutes of just dumping everything out of your brain before you go to sleep? I know a lot of people who swear by 5 minutes of brain dumping in a journal. And even if it's like, I don't know what to write, I don't know what to write, lines and lines and lines of it, like somehow they go to sleep better.
Every day. Every day.
There you go. I am not a journaler. I buy journals. They're beautiful.
Yeah.
I write in 3 pages of them.
Here's the stack. They're very pretty. And this time we're going to stick to it.
That part.
Yeah. They're beautiful. I love
but it's
them.
so pretty to look at. I don't want to ruin it with my handwriting.
Oh, yeah.
I tried to trick myself by not starting on the first page and starting on the 5th page. That made it for 5 pages.
Yeah, right? Listen, tiny wins. Amanda, what's your take on this? Because we obviously can pay attention to everyone's levels.
Mm-hmm.
How does that lend itself into an organization that may not be conducive to their kind of F your feelings, get the work done?
Yeah, I don't know how those type of environments function.
Yeah, no worries.
Doing work, actually.
It's okay. You're having too much fun and
Just to leave.
Yeah, honestly, that's what my brain is saying. I'm like, how does anybody work there? I don't know.
First of all, I want to lean into this because yes, there are so many times that in my roles or other people that I've talked to, they're like, oh, I want to leave. But so, what is that moment? Like, Amanda, you left your job. Why? Like, share this, because I think this is really important.
Yeah, of course. So I was in a leadership position, and I am not a leader that will just look at numbers and be like, okay, numbers are numbers, business is business, this is what we have to do.
Is this working? Yes, it is.
I fought layoffs for months because I personally am against them. I don't think they work. They kill morale. People that are left behind are more likely to leave. And it's a temporary relief if you don't fix the actual business problems that are causing the situation for the layoff. Laying people off isn't going to work. So, and that was the problem. It was a sales problem. It was a bringing in new business problem. It had nothing to do with anybody on the team because the sales were owned by the leadership team, and I'm going to leave it at that. So anyway, months I fought it. I came up with so many other solutions, but they didn't go for any of them. So eventually I was just like, then I will step down and I will come back if you correct this problem, because me doing that was able to save 3 other people's jobs. That's leadership, in my opinion. That's not ruining 3 people's lives because somebody can't make a sale is unacceptable to me. And we need more leaders like that because like
Yeah.
you shouldn't be laying people off who had nothing to do with the decisions that got your company where it is, because those are the people that are laid off, the people who had nothing to do with it. Absolutely
Yeah.
nothing to do with it. And I had to do a round of layoffs like a year and a half before that point, and it was awful. And I thought that too for a while, but yeah. So, you know, and that is, I mean, I felt really good about it. However, I mean, I miss my team. It was hard, but it was the right thing to do. And that is what always guides me. And that is what modern leadership teams are missing: integrity, empathy, accountability. Because I was part of the leadership team. I was part of the decisions that got us there. The people that they wanted to let go were not.
Yeah. And Nicole, you referenced earlier, like they don't take that ownership. Some of the older generations, they'd rather die on the sword than admit that they were wrong.
Mm-hmm.
100%. And, it's interesting. The thing that is different about me from the two of you, both of you focus on leadership development. And I started part of my career in that realm, and I transitioned really quickly. And part of the reason I transitioned was because I felt like I was training people for an environment that wasn't real, and I was actually setting them up to get into situations like Amanda's, where they were going to care about their people like I had trained them to do in a business environment that would punish them for caring about their people. And so I was like, okay, well, I've got to fix the system. Right. There are a bunch of people who are really, really good at leadership development. I'm not that invested in this idea. I care about leadership development because I care about people having a good work environment. I'm going to steal from Amanda again. Work shouldn't suck. And I believe this at my soul level. I couldn't come at it from a leadership development position. I couldn't unsee what I was sending them into. And so I started working around the really funky parts of HR to figure out what had to be true to assuage my own guilt in leadership development, and like what had to be true to create an environment that we could train leaders the way we train leaders and then send them into the environment and not immediately crush their souls. And so that's how I ended up focused on what I'm focused on, because the system is set up to burn people out, because you tell them to care about something and they care about the thing that you taught them to care about, and then they're punished for it.
Yeah. That concludes today, but more to come, because I absolutely have to pick your brains over and over again. Every time I talk with each of you, I learn something new. So with that said, where can we find more information about your platforms or your products, your consultancies? Where can we find you?
So I'm on TikTok as Operation X Phoenix, because Operation Phoenix was taken, so there's an X in the middle. It's the same on Instagram, although I haven't really been active on there. LinkedIn, just Amanda Zidlick, Zidlick. My website is Ops Phoenix, so OPS Phoenix.com.
I am absolutely ludicrously active on LinkedIn. My last name is Eisdorfer, and that's spelled E-I-S like Sam, D like David, O-R-F like Frank, E-R, which I've obviously spelled 17 quadrillion times in my life. I'm also active on Substack, and that is truerwords.substack.com, and on TikTok as I think so the name is HR Truth and Corporate Tea, but I think it's at Stop Lying to Your Employees. I was feeling pretty spicy the day I set that up. And so, if you're a corporate person, then LinkedIn or Substack is probably where you want to follow me. And if you are a frontline employee and you just want someone to tell you that you're not crazy, then TikTok is where you want to hang out with me.
I love it. And, continue to iterate and share. In fact, Nicole right now has this really awesome What's This Stitch activity that I did this morning. And you all, Amanda, I'm going to tell you, I'm going to try to hold you accountable. Go do it, because I think what's magical about this prompt is that by asking people, what other people need to understand about you, or some of these other questions that you'll be posing in the near future, is like, we all just want that connection. And, a lot of people are rushing towards the end. They want to go. But let's not forget to enjoy the moment, because what is the end of our story? It's death. And that, I don't think you want that tomorrow. So stop rushing it, enjoy your time, but also walk the what if, because if we don't ask ourselves, who are we and what do we want to do this? Why are we doing this? We're all going to burn out. And I think what we're talking about today is just a little tip of the iceberg that we're going to see in the next couple years that just amplify if we don't make these changes. So again, thank you so much, Nicole and Amanda. I really appreciate your time. Like Amanda's handle says, work shouldn't suck. Nicole just calls it out like it is because, it is not that great. But together, we're going to do it.